Facebook feed, something that I'm not exactly, I'm not too peppy about, as it were. And so this stream will be in regards to an article that just came out, posted yesterday by CBC News Montreal, titled "Montreal Bagpiper Fined $220 for Carrying Traditional Knife." Byline: Jeff McCarthy says he's never had a problem with formal attire in 25 years. Last updated today, November 4th, 2016. So let's roll into this. Got the chat up there, so if anyone pops in, that will be a thing. There we are. Make sure everything's right. So, this is Jeff. This is Jeff here again. Jolly looking fellow. Reading along, it says, Jeff McCarthy says for the last 25 years, whenever he is walking the streets of Montreal in his kilt, he also has a Scottish traditional knife protruding from his right sock. The pronunciation of this is Sgian-dubh, apparently. A small knife, pronounced Sgian-dubh, is a part of the traditional dress and is regarded as a sign of friendship and good faith, he explained. It's never been a problem. But McCarthy ran into trouble on his way to play the bagpipes at McGill University's fall convocation at Place des Arts Wednesday. He was stopped by Montreal police officers and fined $220 for carrying a knife in public. I was quite shocked, he told the CBC. I wasn't walking down the street waving the knife in a violent manner. McCarthy was ticketed under a municipal bylaw that prohibits anyone from carrying a knife or similar weapon in a public place or transit vehicle, quote, without a reasonable excuse. He tried to explain to the three officers why he was carrying the knife attached to his hose underneath his kilt and sporran, but to no avail. I think this law was applied to me in a very harsh way, he said. At one point, McCarthy said 2 more officers arrived and confiscated the Sgian-dubh, saying he'd have to pay the fine in order to get it back. He hasn't yet decided if he's going to contest the ticket. I seriously hope he does. In the meantime, McCarthy said he'd like to see the police show a little more respect towards the Scottish Montrealers. Scots were one of the founding peoples of Montreal, and the thistle is on the flag of Montreal itself. Let's see some corresponding respect. Asked about the fine, Montreal Mayor Denis Coderre said he does not know about the circumstances, but he questioned whether McCarthy posed a threat. It's up to the police, Coderre said, but maybe they should show some judgment too. Maybe? Maybe they should show some judgment. Well, I thought I'd bring this up because it's a fairly topical issue. This went on back when I was in high school. It was a big issue about the Sikh Kirpan dagger. I'll refer you to this here. Alright, there's always been some Canadian issue. In most public places in Canada, a kirpan is allowed, although there have been some court cases regarding carrying on school premises. In the 2016 Supreme Court of Canada decision, Multani versus Commission Scolaire Marguerite Bourgeois, I got that right, the court held that the banning of the kirpan in a school environment offended Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and that the restriction could be upheld under Section 1 of the Charter as per R.V. Oakes. The issue started when a 12-year-old schoolboy dropped a 20-centimeter, 8-inch long kirpan in school. School staff and parents were very concerned, and the student was required to attend school under police supervision until the court decision was reached. A student is allowed to have a kirpan on his person if it is sealed and secured. In September 2008, Montreal police announced that a 13-year-old student was to be charged after he allegedly threatened another student with his kirpan. The court found the student not guilty of assault with the kirpan, but guilty of threatening his schoolmates. Odd, because under tort law, assault can be verbal here. And he was granted an absolute discharge on the 15th of April 2009. On February 9th, 2011, the National Assembly of Quebec unanimously voted to ban kirpans from the provincial parliament buildings. However, despite opposition from the Bloc Québécois, it was voted that the kirpan be allowed in federal parliamentary buildings. So we have a precedent that states that traditional knives, when worn ceremoniously in nature, are allowed in Canada, even in Quebec, where this issue has taken place. And I will point out here, as far as the origins, because he mentions that it was, I want to get his quote correct here. A sign of friendship and good faith, he explained. Now, the origins of the Sgian-dubh are as follows, or at least presumed to be as follows. Sgian-dubh may have evolved from the Sgian-dubh, a dagger that could be concealed under the armpit. Used by Scots of the 17th and 18th centuries, this knife was slightly larger than the average modern-day Sgian-dubh and was carried in the upper sleeve or lining of the body of the jacket. Courtesy and etiquette would demand that, when entering the home of a friend, any concealed weapons would be revealed. It follows that the Sgian-dubh would be removed from its hiding place and displayed in the stocking top held securely by the garters. The Sgian-dubh also resembles a small skinning knife that is part of the typical set of hunting knives. These sets contain a butchering knife with an 9 to 10 inches blade, and a skinner with a blade of about 4 inches, 100 millimeters or so. These knives usually had antler handles, as do many early Sgian-dubhs. The larger knife is likely the ancestor of the modern dirk. Okay, so if we take a look at where this is coming from, the reason it is displayed openly in the sock, or garter as it should be, is because it's a sign of respect. You don't enter or go to a place of friendship or respect where you're concealing a weapon, so you would show it openly. That's what he was doing. You can see here, I think I have it set up so you can see. Yes. Right here, and let's open this so we can zoom in. You can see that he does have his Sgian-dubh knife in his garter, in his sock. It's perfectly visible. Now, the other point I wanted to make here was based under Canadian Criminal Code. Here, Justice Law's website. You can see a link right there. And this has brought me here from, sorry, I'll do I had it with the Criminal Code. Assumptions. It's odd. Give me one moment here. I'll have to pull it back from the. Dun, dun, dun. Dagger. I spelled it wrong initially. Canadian knife legislation. And we'll follow this through. Canada. And the Canadian Criminal Code criminalizes the possession of knives which open automatically. Section 84.1 defines a knife that has a blade that opens automatically by gravity or centrifugal force, or by hand pressure applied to a button, spring, or other device attached to the handle of the knife as a prohibited weapon. 13. Only persons who have been granted exemption by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police through the Canadian Firearms Program are allowed to possess but not acquire prohibited weapons. It's kind of odd. If a person is found in unauthorized possession of a prohibited knife by any law enforcement officer, the person is liable to a maximum of 5 years in jail, and the weapon being seized. The Crown can then apply a provincial court judge for the weapon to be forfeited and destroyed. The import and export of prohibited weapons is also strictly regulated and enforced by the Canada Border Services Agency. Examples of a prohibited knife include any knife including a switchblade or butterfly knife with a blade that opens automatically by gravity or centrifugal force, or by hand pressure applied to a button, spring, or other device in or attached to the handle of the knife, constant companion, so a belt buckle knife, finger rings with blades or other sharp objects protruding from the surface, or push daggers, manually opened or one-handed opening knives, including spring-assisted knives that do not follow the categories listed as prohibited weapons. Definition are legal to own, import, and use. There's no length restriction on carrying knives in the Criminal Code. But there is a prohibition against carrying a knife if the possessor intends to carry it for a purpose dangerous to the public peace or for the purpose of committing a criminal offense. Well, I would think it would be reasonable to assume that Mr. McCarthy, Jeff McCarthy, was not carrying his knife for the intent dangerous to a public peace or for the purpose of committing a criminal offense, as he was carrying it as part of his traditional dress, as you can see here, and less so here with the knife not included. Folks, this is an issue of respect. In my eyes, there's no good reason why they should have confiscated him from this and fined him. I can't say how he was acting or how he was presenting himself at the time of the incident, but he does seem to be a rather jovial sort of fellow. Not exactly somebody. He's a big guy. I'm not saying that just his presence wouldn't be slightly intimidating, but there's no reason on those grounds to confiscate this knife from him. If anything, it can definitely be considered a utility knife, considering not only is it traditional, but it is also part of a traditional hunting knife set that would have been used for, again, skinning, hunting, that sort of thing. There's a message in the chat here. Interesting article. I would say so. Now, again, he even says, he wasn't walking down the street waving the knife in a violent manner. He wasn't brandishing a weapon. He wasn't disturbing the public peace. He was going as requested to a job site, essentially, in his proper uniform. Now, I don't know why Montreal police decided to stop him and, bugger off for everybody else when other traditional ceremonial knives are allowed to be carried. But I'm hoping that Jeff decides to challenge this ticket. I sure as hell would not be paying it. And I've tried. I can't find a way to get a hold of Jeff. I'm going to try to do so and send him some encouragement and support, because this is ridiculous. I think I can see Blake here. Is Scottish discrimination a common thing in Canada? Aside from the fact that we make plenty of jokes about drinking in kilts, I would not say so. It's not something that I've seen an issue in the past. Actually, I'm quite fond of bagpipes myself. I get quite the emotional resonance with me. Years ago, we used to have a family memorial golf tournament and fish fry, or fishing tournament. And at the start and close of it, we had a neighbor up at the family cottage who would play the bagpipes. It's always been a very, I get a little teary-eyed whenever I see or hear bagpipes being played. It's a big thing for me. So no, I would not say that Scottish discrimination is a common thing in Canada. There's actually a couple of, I want to say it's a Nova Scotian regiment, and I'll try and do this here, but there we go. Nova Scotia Highlanders. This should be the group I am thinking of. Yes, Military History Nova Scotia. The regiment was formed in 1954 by the amalgamation of the Nova Scotia Highlanders and the Cape Breton Highlanders and the Pictou Highlanders. Composed of two separate units, officially designated as the 1st Battalion, Nova Scotia Highlanders North, and 2nd Battalion, Nova Scotia Highlanders Cape Breton, both of which were part of 5th Canadian Division, 36th Canadian Brigade Group. 1st Battalion was headquartered in Truro, with individual companies located in Amherst, Pictou, New Glasgow, Spring Hill, and Truro again. 2nd Battalion was headquartered in Sydney, Nova Scotia, and in 2011 it was renamed back to its pre-1954 designation, the Cape Breton Highlanders. So it's now a 1-battalion regiment. But essentially, the lineage here goes all the way back to 1871, originating in Truro, Nova Scotia, and the Nova Scotia Highlanders and Highland regiments across Canada, Scottish in nature, have fought in both World Wars and ever since, predating those. So no, I would not presume that beyond what I've seen, and that's essentially nothing, that there's any sort of Scottish discrimination in Canada. Not something that we're typically engaged in. Actually, the Scots have I think there's a couple of Victoria Cross winners in Highland units across Canada from the First and Second World Wars. So no, there is not a culture of discrimination against the Scots in Canada that I am familiar with. Again, the pipes and drums are very very important kind of cultural display when it comes to things like Remembrance Day. Many folks have bagpipers for funerals and in some cases weddings and other major functions. We can pull up Canadian pipes and drums and give you folks a little bit of a feel here. RCMP pipes and drums at the Men Gate, so Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Pipes and drums of the Canadian Scottish Regiment, Princess Mary's at Victoria Symphony / 2013. Yes, there's not exactly any sort of derision aimed at the Scots. Again, aside from good-humored drinking jokes and pokes of the kilt, but piece of advice: never ask a Scot what they're wearing under their kilt, they're liable to show you, and it's not pleasant. We have a couple of Scots that I play paintball with, actually, who wear their kilts while playing, which is a little bit more ballsy than I would be apt to engage in, but all the power to them. Also, of course, the Maple Leaf Forever, 48th Highlanders, Candlepipes and Drums. This is actually our second national anthem, so please enjoy. Like a lot of nations, we do have a pair of national anthems, kind of the official and the traditional. Let's see, let's have, it won't have any sort of, there's the actual Maple Leaf Forever. That there, and actually if you go back even further, I love this one. The Canadians arrive from the Devil's Brigade, and this goes back to World War II. It was made in 1968. Skip this here. Just to demonstrate that Canada does have a history, and the Scots and bagpipes in general are tied in very closely with Canadian culture.
Right, big mouth, that did it.
Wait for it. Yeah, the MPs run in. And all of a sudden, there the hell. Here we go. Go. It's a very, very common pipes and drums number to hear, especially at Remembrance Day, military services all around the world, around the Commonwealth. And I happen to love this bit, actually. No offense to the Americans involved, but it was supposed to be one of the taglines in the movie was "spit and polish." And the spit with the Americans, a ragtag band for the Devil's Brigade, and the polish was the Canadians with this glorious entry to the unit, leaving the rough and tumble ragtag-looking group of Americans very confused. But yes, you will see many displays of Scottish traditions in Canadian culture, militarily and in civilian life. So no, as a very extended answer, Scottish discrimination is not a very common occurrence in Canada. Actually, I would say we hold the Scots in very high regard, at least I do. Most of the British Commonwealth holds the Scottish, and especially the Highlanders, in very, very high regard, as going back into the British Indian Wars of the late 1700s, pre-1800s. Scottish regiments were feared, feared and respected by both sides of the fight. You would very, very commonly see the start of a pitched battle that you would have the British regulars fire a couple of volleys into the opposing front lines, and at this point the Scots would basically rush in, axes, swords, bayonets held, and just devastate, enemy front lines. Caused a lot of havoc. Let's see, another chat there. Would you consider the situation to be an anti-Scottish situation or police not understanding their own rules situation? To be honest, I would not say that this is Scottish discrimination per se. I would say that the act in I think that the police should have understood their own rules. They said they released 5 officers, 3 called 2 more. So between 5 officers, to tell me that in a province that's had so many issues with as I mentioned earlier, with the Kirpan dagger with the Sikhs, to say that they're not understanding their own rules, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I'm all for giving the benefit of the doubt in most cases, but in this case, Quebec has had at least 3 very prominent cases that went to or around the Supreme Court of Canada over the traditional wearing of the Sikh Kirpan. I would say that no, this was some very serious oversight, and the police were flexing some muscle in a way that they should not have. Yeah, it's very, very clear. I think there may have been some issues there. It's more anti-white, if you ask me. I'm going to go on a limb here, having seen, he could just be a tanned fellow. I don't know McCarthy's background, but again, McCarthy. It's very, very indicative of the British Isles, at the very least. No, I would not say it's anti-white. There's no reason for me to believe that it's. Hey there, Danielle. Evilness. There's no reason for me to say it's anti-white. I don't know the orientation as far as opinions of the officers who arrested, or who are not arrested, but who ticketed him and confiscated the knife. To say it was anti-white, I'd have to say they were either self-hating whites or prove they weren't white, which we don't know at the moment. I'm hoping that more information will come out. But yes, so I guess I gotta try to answer this as succinctly as possible. Would you consider this situation East Indians absolutely do? Actually, Danielle, I covered that earlier in the stream, that the Kirpan dagger is allowed to be carried here in Canada, and the Supreme Court of Canada has upheld that. So I don't see why a bagpiper going to a professional engagement where he has been requested in full traditional garb should be hassled by the Montreal police. But no, would you consider the situation to be an anti-Scottish situation or a police not understanding their own rules situation? It's very, very hard to make a straight up, this is what they were doing. Yes, because he is of the white cultures. I think that there is I think that Canada has taken in a good portion of this whole white guilt concept, where we do allow for much more. We're much more lenient when it comes to the cultural practices of other cultures, as opposed to the practices of our own. So I think that it's probably an overreaction to seeing a knife and police probably trying to make a ticketing quota. If I had to hazard a guess, I would guess at police thinking it was an easy mark for making a public citation quota in order to raise funds, because again, the money money comes back into the government. I'm going to sound very, very on the crazy libertarian side. Yes, white cultures are a-okay to discriminate against in Canada, whereas others are not. And overcorrection, tag teaming this poor guy. Absolutely. I think Rath's got this nailed. They're seeing a knife, they're saying, oh, well, the bylaw says you can't carry it in a manner. But what gets me is that, as it says here, without a reasonable excuse. You're going to tell me that the man going to perform his job, right, as he says, he was on his way to play the bagpipes at McGill University's fall convocation, and that would not be an impromptu job for him. One would not just randomly show up to play bagpipes at a university convocation. You would need to be requested by the university to show up and be on grounds. So yeah, I don't think there's a reason as to why he should have been stopped, but I don't necessarily think it's anti-white. That's very true. Not hard to get the anti-white sentiment when you see the. I'm not, William. I'm not judging you for saying it's more anti-white. And again, your opinion, your take on it. I'm full on mutt. Mutt? I'm confused. But no, I would say that this was an overreaction by the police, seeing a knife and acting on it. If I had to say, what probably happened was that a police officer, so one of the initial 3 who saw him and confronted him, may have just seen the knife and made the snap decision saying, oh, it's a knife in public, we can't have this. And the other two were kind of like, oh shit, damn it, Pierre's gone off again and fucked this up. We're going to have to back him up on this one and hope that the person just kind of backs down from it. And I think that seeing McCarthy dressed in the garb of a typically white or at least Anglophone group would be another issue. Well, he probably won't fight back over it because, he'll probably back down because political correctness doesn't back up the Anglophone cultures as much. On a side note, nothing adds ambiance to a military ceremony than bagpipes. It's very, very true. Yeah, to any ceremony, I would say. I'm one of those weird people who just loves bagpipes. I know so many folks who just can't stand them. They think they're loud, they're noisy and obnoxious. I happen to think that, you know what, if you play bagpipes around me all day, I'd be a very, very happy Canadian. Take a drink here. But yeah, so I think what happened was one cop saw a knife, overreacted. The other cops backed him up, figuring it was easier to back up a police officer in that case, kind of hold the blue line, as it were, and hope that this would not blow up in their faces. I think it has now, and I think it would be ridiculous if McCarthy pays the fine for this. If I were him, I would fight it. Unfortunately, I have no bagpiping skills, and I don't have the justification to go around dressed as such carrying it. No Scottish heritage. So there's really no line that I can pull here. But what I will say is that as there may not be particularly Scottish discrimination in Canada or Quebec, but I do believe there is in fact a lot of Anglophone, anti-Anglophone discrimination in Quebec. Danielle, we got to teach you to play the bagpipes, get you strapped up with a Sgian-dubh, and get you out there in Quebec and have somebody stop you. They'd have a tough time, though, because, you're a woman and all. So at least the PC, the progressive stack kind of defends you a little bit, although you're a shitlord, so maybe it doesn't. You can play the bagpipes? You can. No. I demand proof. I demand proof that you can play the bagpipes, because that's amazing. And you've got a kilt. Okay, so I'm gonna have to find you wherever you are and just give you a giant hug, because you are my favorite. You're one of my favorite kinds of people. It's an heirloom. It's like an old women's history. Yeah, this is one of those things that I see it. I understand that the Kirpan dagger, and I will give it the here we are. I'll give it the recognition it deserves. It is said here, worn at all times by Sikhs. And where was it? Saint soldier with courage to defend the rights of all who are wrong, oppressed, persecuted, irrespective. I'll give credit to the Sikhs because they are one of the groups that I'm really like, you know what, you guys are okay. Canada, we had that. It was the Kirpan is a sword or knife carried by Sikhs. It is a religious commandment given by Guru Gobind Singh. I'm gonna butcher that. In 1699, that Sikhs must wear 5 articles of faith at all times, the Kirpan being one of the 5 articles. So it is a designation or a display of faith. So in this case, it is directly related to a religious issue. So it's not necessarily a religious display that Jeff McCarthy is making. However, it is a traditional one. It's a cultural one. And as we know in Canada, there's a very, very muddied line between what constitutes religion and what constitutes culture. I don't own bagpipes. Sadly, good ones are expensive, but easy to translate. Yes, she did just get 1 million JT points. So, if we look at things like the burqa or the hijab or the niqab in Canada, they are not specifically set out in the Quran. It's just that women and men must dress modestly. A schoolgirl skirt that doubles as one. Do you want 2 million points? This is like Whose Line Is It Anyway, where the rules are made up and the points don't matter. But we're gonna go with the schoolgirl skirt kilt. I'll give you some extra points on that. But no, The burqa, niqab, hijab, and the rest of the running the gambit there, the rest of the spectrum of different coverings. Picture didn't happen. They are allowed under freedom of religion in Canada. The issue with this being that they are not actually mandated by religion. There's nothing in the Muslim holy text that says this. Nothing in the Quran says this is what you gotta wear, just modestly. Just that they must dress modestly. So, but they get away with it under the grounds of, oh, it's religious freedom. Well, fine. In this case, the Sikh dagger, the Kirpan, has much more claim to it. It is put forth by one of the gurus, yes, Guru Gobind Singh. So that was actually put forth by a religious figure, said, nope, must wear 5 articles of faith at all times, this being one of them. In this case, I think there's a certain level of cultural religion, or cultural expression, which comes with freedom of expression in general. In Canada, it is freedom of thought, belief, and expression where reasonable. I would say this is reasonable, and I think you would have a very tough time convincing myself or any reasonable person otherwise. Any other questions? I do like the questions. I always love questions because questions lead to me actually looking for stuff and researching, so it's always very fun. Here's a fantastic method of distraction. Yes, they are. Wrath, yes, they are. But yes, is anyone any other questions before I wrap this up? Because I don't want to keep this stream going too long. This is more of an impromptu. Let's get this nailed down. Yeah, 30 minutes, 32 at the point. LOL, evil. But yes, I would like to thank you all for popping by and showing up for the stream. Before I head out, there is one more thing I would like to say because I always like to. Oh, what is? I don't know what's with this whole this downvote. I'm a little hurt by that, but okay. Fair. Maybe one of those police officers found my stream. Deciding to keep me down. But what I will say is that I do have more comments below. My fave beer. Oh, I like this. Too bad Ava ruined ties. She did not ruin ties. Forget about her. She didn't ruin ties. Ties are still awesome. The weird way she wore it, not cool. But I always, like every man's crazy about a sharp dressed girl. All right, go with that. A little bit of ZZ Top turnaround. My favorite beer. You're gonna hate me. I am a very stereotypical Molson Canadian guy. It's either Molson Canadian, Budweiser, or Guinness. One of the three. Who downvotes a live stream during the stream? I don't know, but it's happened a few times to me. It's happened a few times. Just kind of people just pop by, drop a dislike and head on. So, tits up to you, folks. Oh, you look like Avril. ZZ Top fixes everything. Very true. But no, my first legal beer was a Budweiser, I believe. Beyond that, though, I'm usually a Molson guy. Like my Molson. Guinness if I'm feeling a little like harkening back to the land of the ancestors, go back to Ireland. Would love to go there someday. But yes, favorite beer, Molson Canadian, in that order: Molson Canadian, Budweiser, Guinness. Molson Canadian, Budweiser, Guinness, and then Sleeman. Good Canadian brew. Come on, folks, other questions. Actually, if we're going to do a Q&A live stream, I think I'll just do that another day. Agreed. Nice. Good on you, William. Good on you. Good on you, Bill. All right, folks. So, with that said, Billy, you want to say hi to the stream? Billy? Yep, there's Billy saying hi to the stream. Beer but Guinness is good with fish and chips. Yeah, Bud is swill. Fuck you, Danielle. You're on your own. Hey, buddy. So what I'm going to do, folks, I'm actually going to head out right now. I'm going to go grab a bite to eat. But I'll be back in a bit.